Just going to read a little bit more from the Republic. These very famous passages from books 5 through 7 that have to do with knowledge. And it's thought that these passages more describe Plato's views than Socrates' views. We're starting to get to a point in the Republic where it's a bit muddier whether what Socrates is saying is the kind of thing that the real Socrates would have said, or whether it's more that Socrates is just a mouthpiece for Plato's own original philosophical ideas that might be different from those of his teacher. So I may often in these passages describe the ideas that are presented as ideas presented by Plato or Plato's ideas, and that is basically fitting this this reading that a lot of scholars give of this book, that these are passages that more express Plato's ideas than Socrates's. So you remember that in the description of the just city, Socrates had said that the just city would be led by the guardians, who were the most wise, and that that's their characteristic virtue. And this is, in his description, a group of people, both men and women, which he clarifies in Book 5, a passage we're not reading, but you might read on your own. It's the first 5 or 6 pages of Book 5. He clarifies that because women are as capable of being wise as men are, they're as capable of having the kind of understanding of things that includes understanding the difference between the better and the worse and what reasons there are for believing one thing or another, that they should be trained to be guardians too, as much as possible. So Plato's, or I should say Socrates' description of this society in terms of these different classes is one where people are basically offered education at an early age. And those who perform most successfully at the education that they're offered, those who kind of pass certain early tests, get pushed up in the ranking system to a guardian status if they do well enough. So the education system is going to kind of direct people to where, so that the most competent people for the different positions end up in the different positions. Again, in the ideal society that Socrates is describing. So this guardian class is going to be selected in part by the process of education. And again, both men and women are going to be eligible for guardian status, as with the other classes. It's just going to be a matter of how well they perform within the educational system and how well they pass the tests that are requisite to make it to the different classes. So in the process of kind of laying out this educational system of the ideal society, Socrates mentions that there's a most important subject for the guardians to study. And Glaucon asks what this is, and Socrates clarifies that it's knowledge of the form of the good. And this phrase might sound a little odd to you or to us today. The word form is eidos in Greek, and it's sometimes translated as idea or as form. And it's the way that Plato uses the term, and here this is thought to be really an innovation of Plato's, not so much something that Socrates himself thought or defended. The way Plato uses the idea, it's a really crucial concept and term for his whole philosophy. And we're going to learn more about that soon, because Socrates is going to present 3 ways to understand what this knowledge of the form of the good is. And in presenting that, we also get a taste for what Plato thinks forms in general are. Forms, eidos or ideas, for Plato were, he thought, kinds of eternal entities that everything in the perceptible world, the world that we experience day to day and that we observe and study, if we study it, was a copy of these eternal entities. So that even though there are many beautiful things, there's one form of the beautiful. Even though there are many things of a certain kind in terms of what we perceive, there has to be just one of that kind of thing in some kind of eternal space or some kind of eternal existence, because otherwise the commonality of all of these things that we perceive, they're meeting a certain type or a certain archetype, you could say, couldn't be explained or understood. So the forms are an explanation as to why it is reality has a certain structure and a certain pattern. It's because the different things that we see, they're similar to one another, because ultimately, if they are similar to one another, like horses, every horse is similar to every other horse, they're similar to one another because somewhere, not actually a literal place, but in a kind of eternal existence, there is the form of a horse. And it's those forms that we come to know when we have knowledge. And this is why, for Plato, Socrates' method of seeking after what something is, when he asks, what is X, what is justice, what is love, etc., why that practice can make sense is because what Socrates is looking for is the form of love, or the form of justice, or the form of friendship, etc., or whatever thing it is he's asking about when he asks, what is X? And those forms have to exist or else they can't be known. So for Plato, again, these forms exist as an eternal thing, not really somewhere, not in a place, but they exist in a, and maybe you could say in a kind of placeless, timeless way. And that's what we know when we have knowledge of something.